Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development over here at CTC Software, and today we are excited to continue the project setup, or project startup process. This is part 2, focusing on the MEPP Productivity Pack. Now, of course, as always, these webinars are recorded, and for those of you who participate with us live in the webinar, you are more than welcome to throw questions into the questions window in GoToWebinar, and I try to answer them live and in line in the presentation. And we also save a huge QA session for the end for those of you who are attending live also. So without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about today's topic. So the MEP Productivity Pack really is a very powerful collection of workflows and incredibly powerful content for Revit. Now here's the trick. You need to be able to implement these workflows in the most efficient way and consistent way that you possibly can so you can realize all these benefits. Now, one of the biggest issues we run into a lot of the time when working with projects in MEP is that whole model startup process. When done right, it can save hours throughout the life cycle, days even throughout the life cycle of the project. But really, when done right, can save hours during the project setup time. So in this session, we're going to be covering specifically how to automate like a cartoon sheet set. We're going to build on everything that we did in part 1. And then we're going to take and build on top of that a whole cartooned out sheet set. And we're going to build a couple of real sheets with real title blocks in the live project model. And we are going to be laying out a workflow that's going to help you take this whole sheet creation process. And after today's discussion, you can really turn this into a 2-minute process. Literally, it's a 2-minute process when done correctly. All right, so we're going to go through a couple of things today. I'm going to outline what's required for this sheet list. I'm going to give you my rules. Now, you may certainly have different rules, and that's totally fine, but I'm going to lay out my rules for today, and I'm going to establish a true process for actually creating these sheets. Then, because we're talking about automation here, and one of the best tools for this is Spreadsheet Link, we're going to be building up a Spreadsheet Link template to really help us automate this sheet creation process. We're going to be generating all of the actual plan sheets live in the project. We're going to use both placeholder sheets and then turning them into real sheets. That's going to be the part that's really what this is focusing on, 2 minutes to generate all those sheets. And then I'm going to show you 2 different methods that you can use for populating these sheets with all of the unplaced construction document plan views. 2 different ways you can go with that, and it can either be a couple of minutes, or if you want to do it completely manually, of course, it can be hours, depending on how you want to lay that out. But we're going to talk about the automated way today by using one of the other tools in the BIM project suite, Sheet Assistant. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit of an outline here on the project startup whole process and where we are in this workflow, so we can kind of refresh you as to where we are here in part 2. So we are talking through the entire project startup process by going from opening the model, detached, saving as a new model. We are reloading the links that we have available, specifically the architectural model. That's what we did in this presentation already, or that's part 1. We do copy monitor. We generate a whole bunch of plan views using the view creator tool set. And effectively, all of that is what we've already covered in that part 1. Then we're moving on to creating plan sheets, importing typical schedules and preliminary detail sheets, creating spaces, zones, doing a little bit of analysis, and then just basically jumping right into design. Today's part 2 session, we're focusing right here on creating those plan sheets. So let's talk about that sheet creation process. What exactly are we trying to achieve here, and what are kind of the criteria that we need to use? So we generated, what was it last time? I took and rebuilt a bunch of views recently here and did the math. So I generated 252 floor plan views in total, but a lot of those are design views and sort of analytical views and whatnot. But basically each view that was specifically construction permit, well, each of those views, they need to be put on a sheet somehow. Whether there's multiple views on a single sheet or a single sheet per view, they need to be placed on a sheet. And apparently I mistyped something. Oh, no, I didn't. That's fine. Each discipline needs a couple of different things. It needs a sheet letter designation. It needs a sheet discipline designation. and it needs a sheet order value. And those are all important because the order value helps it sort properly in schedules. The discipline designation helps it sort properly in the project browser, and the letter designation helps it read well on the actual title block. So each major discipline and subdiscipline needs some sort of combination of this. And then in addition to that, each subdiscipline needs a numbering designation. So if I'm doing plumbing DVW sheets versus plumbing domestic water sheets, it's going to be a different numbering sequence. And so I need to determine what I want for that numbering designation for those subdisciplines. Now, in addition to that, every level needs some kind of numbering or naming designation. And so on the sheet numbering, I, of course, want to have, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever I want that to be for the main sheets, but then the actual naming needs to be established as well based on the level. And then every view type within there, whether it be a plan view or ceiling plan view or enlarged plan view, they need some kind of numbering and, again, naming designations as well. All of this comes together to build up the sheets as a whole. So it's more than just creating a sheet. It's also establishing the number, the sorting, the naming. All of that needs to be put together to give us a proper sheet. So what I'm going to be doing is outlining all of these rules and establishing these standards right within our tool that we already have in the BIM project suite, right next to the View Creator tool we were already using. I'm going to be using Spreadsheet Link to build myself a template so that I can do all of these steps. There's a couple of things that I always do when I'm building out a Spreadsheet Link template. The most important thing is I always start with the basic tabs and fields that I need. I pick them and add them to Spreadsheet Link, and then eventually I save it out. Now, typically, I'll save it out as an XLSX file that I can use repetitively. But in today's session, I'm going to be saving it out specifically as an XLSM. And the reason I'm saving it out as an XLSM is because since I don't know how many views I'm going to be having in a project, I don't know how many levels I'm going to be having, it makes the formulas really complicated when you're trying to account for all that. So what I like to do is save it out as an XLSM. This is a macro-enabled workbook, and what that lets me do is build up macros that will stay with this XLSM file, and I can then run them in the future, and that macro will actually help me generate my sheets automatically and give the end user a really clean output that they can use to bring back into Revit. And it happens in seconds. It's so quick once that macro runs. The hardest part is for us to build the macro. Now, good news, if you want this template that I'm putting together today, I am more than happy to send it to you. Just reach out, contact us after this webinar, and we'll be more than happy to email over a zip file that contains both the template that I'm building today and the settings file, so you can make this 100% repeatable on your projects. That would be info@ctcsoftware.com. And or when the 20.1.2 version of the pack comes out, these settings will also be in that official version of the pack as well, as one of the additional kind of companion settings files that you can use. Okay, so then after I build the XLSM file and I save it out, I'm going to open that in Excel, and I'm going to be building the macros in Excel. One of the things that I really like to do is I like to make sure I clean up the worksheet. So when I'm looking at the template, I can see that it's a template. It's nice, neat, and clean so that when somebody opens it, they don't start with a bunch of data that gets deleted and then rebuilt. It just starts with no data, and it looks cleaner, in my opinion. And then what I like to do is I like to save it and, of course, test. And so this is where we're going to start today. I've already outlined sort of all of the rules that I need. I'm going to start building this up, and we're going to kind of do this live so you can see exactly how I went through the process of building this. Now, I'm not going to be talking in depth today about how to fully build macros in Excel. I'll give you some tips. Google is a really good teacher. Also, in the not too distant future on CTC's event pages, we have an advanced Excel advanced Excel formulas webinar that we're going to be presenting to be used in collaboration with Spreadsheet Link. So I would take a look at that because we're going to be going over some of these key formulas that I'll be writing and key macros that I'll be sort of establishing here. But I'm going to show you today just a quick way that you can sort of build this up yourself if you want to use this in other ways. So I'm going to jump into Revit here, pull Revit to the foreground, and we're going to start the process of building up these sheets. Now, right now, I have effectively just some title sheets and some specifications sheets in each of these, different major disciplines here. My goal is to ultimately have all of their specific plan sheets organized here, and then on each of the cover sheets, if there's an actual sheet list here, and I believe that there is, those will be filled out with that proper disciplines sheets. And then in addition to that, on the sheet itself, when I'm looking at the sheet, the actual sheet number and sheet name will be all fully filled out. And so we're going to be using all of the construction permit plans that we have up here that we generated last time. So if I go to electrical floor plans, for example, did I not save this again? Let's go to lighting. There we go, ceiling plans. Here's a better example. I built a whole bunch of enlarged plans inside of here. I built the main floor plans inside of here. I may have a couple of extras that I left behind that probably I should clean up. But each of these main floor plans and each of these enlarged plans, they all need to be placed on a sheet. These large plan masters, I do not want placed on a sheet. They're just there to organize my enlarged dependent views over here. And so I'm going to be specifically filtering these guys out of my list. And that will be true throughout all of these different collections. Mechanical floor plans, same game, same pattern, same types of views. They all exist inside of here. Now I'm going to intentionally leave some of these in the list so that we can see what happens if we end up having duplicate views and how we can quantify or qualify that so we can be sure to filter out trash we don't want and don't try, to cause ourselves troubles or problems when we bring these back in to the Revit project model. Let's collapse these down. Let's just have a couple more here. Power plans, plumbing plans, domestic and DVW. There's a bunch of demolition and extra floor plans. I'll probably have to do something to handle these separate from these. We'll find that out when we get into the view creation process. First things first, let's build up all the things that we're going to be needing. I'm going to outline this exactly what it is I need. I know that I want to have sheets. I know that I want the views because I'm going to be building sheets based on views. I also like leveraging levels. And so let's get all of those things. Let's go get sheets first. Pull those into the mix. Let's go get the views. Views is going to take a second longer to get because it's got a bunch of views already in the model, 252 plus views in the model. And then I also wanted levels inside of here. I like the levels because I can use the naming and the view creator abbreviation for levels for the actual designations. And so since levels is the easiest, let's start here. I'm going to start with the elevation. I'm going to start with the name and the view creator abbreviation. I can leverage all of these to figure out exactly what it is I want in my list of views here. Now, parapet level is not a real building level. I don't want to accidentally be generating a sheet for it. The dynamic legend is just there for the legend views that we use, and so I don't want this showing up either. And I believe I can filter those out fairly easily. In fact, there's a property on the levels. It's called building story. And if I set this to the false or the true value, it'll only show me levels that are actually building stories. So those that are not are just marked as, well, false, or they're undefined. You can always turn them off or set them to false in the levels and the elevation views. I've already done that. That was already handled, but it's just a good way to filter this out. Now, personally, I also like to turn off unit symbols here so that this feet and inches kind of goes away. And what it'll do is just give me decimal feet. Now, I use that so that I can alphanumerically sort these by their elevation. And you can choose to either go ascending from lowest to highest. Some people like doing that, kind of the same order that it shows up here in the project browser in a lot of cases when it does alphabetic sorting. You could choose to, if you wanted to, set that to descending, so it goes highest level on top, lowest level on the bottom. Up to you, doesn't really matter. It's just more of a visual thing. Whatever you do, though, when you use these levels in a bunch of other workflows, be consistent. So I tend to just do ascending since it's the default, but you can do whatever you want. In this case, I have my levels now told to be acquired here. Now I'm going to go to views next, and there are a number of view properties that I want to be using, that I want to have here in my list. One of the important view properties here is discipline. I always use this one just because I like to know what discipline views themselves are associated to. I can also use this in a lot of cases for filtration. I like to know what level these views are associated to. So associated level is another really important one. Let's see here, view creator abbreviation. Of course, I want that one, view creator abbreviation, because this helps me understand what the naming parts are that were used to define the views themselves. And I use this to figure out what my name is going to be. And then I also want to know specifically what scope box was associated to these views. So I'm going to use scope box here, pull this to the foreground so we know if it's a building, if it's none, if it's area A, B, C, D, whatever building scope box that is. Scroll down here, there's going to be a bunch eventually. There we go. Whole bunch of area A's and B's in the list. And then I also like to know what the subdiscipline is. And subdiscipline in the MEP productivity pack is really important. See, Autodesk only gives us a couple of discipline views, and really it's the subdiscipline that in a lot of cases is most important. Very specifically, if I get down far enough here, I'll show you an example. Yeah, here's a good example. They don't give us a true fire protection classification, but I want all of my fire protection sheets to be F sheets, not P sheets. But the out-of-the-box discipline list, it's only plumbing. And so we're going to have to be accounting for subdiscipline as well as discipline in a lot of cases throughout this sheet creation process. And so we've already pre-built that in. Our view templates set the subdiscipline, and that's a lot of how our views over here get sorted out, is by the subdiscipline. And so I'll be leveraging that pretty heavily inside of here. Now, there's a lot of these views in this list. If I was to pull in the family of the view, let's just go find that real quick here. F, there we go, family. The family of the view in a lot of these is going to be something other than a plan. Now, I've got a lot of ceiling plans, I've got a lot of floor plans, pretty much anything that contains plan I want, but anything that's like 3D views or section or elevation, drafting view schedules, I don't want any of those in this list. So to save myself all kinds of headache of weeding that out with formulas in the future, I'm just going to weed it out of my actual list here as well. So I'm going to go over here to my filters for my views, and I'm going to start filtering this out. There's actually a few things that I like to use. In fact, I'm going to be maxing out my filtration here intentionally. I'm going to be starting with something like the view classification. And there's the view classification specifically is how it's organized here in the project browser. That's this construction permit set right here. I don't care about any of my design model views or model setup views. None of these really matter for the floor plan. So I only want things that are pre-listed as construction permit, because those are the ones that are specifically going to be going to sheets. So we're going to go in here and just find view classification. There we go. And if it equals specifically construction permit, that's the one in my list that I care the most about, then that's what's going to show up here in my collection. The next thing that I care about is the family of the thing. Remember over here, I had family set, and you can see there's floor plans and 3D views, potentially sections, all kinds of trash that I don't care about. So I'm going to go here to the family, and I believe it's the one that's listed as text. Revit likes to, in the API, give you back 2. And I'm going to use the option here for contains. Yep, this is what I want. And if it contains plan, notice how there's some that are listed as floor plan and some that are listed as floor plans, plural. I'm just going to say if it includes plan, I want it. So that's all I really care about right there. As I click away, anything that is not a plan now goes away. So I'm left with floor plans, ceiling plans, floor plan, singular, ceiling plan, singular. Depends on how Revit wants to give it back to us. We got all those in my list. I also want to be sure, since the dynamic legend style views, those are, I don't want them in this list. Remember, I filtered them out of the levels. They're gone here, but I also want them out of this list here. There's a few, yeah, here's a couple right here. Mechanical views, dynamic legend, mechanical. There's going to be some electrical views for this as well. I don't want these symbols views in my list. So if it's associated to the level dynamic legend at all, just don't show it to me. So I'm going to be using that as a key filter here. So I'm going to go down to the associated level, or up to rather the associated level. And if that associated level equals dynamic legend, or I should say does not equal, if it does not equal dynamic legend, then that's what I want to be including in this list. And then finally, I also want to make sure that for the dependency property, now you can't see this here, but I pre-looked at this. When you have views that have been duplicated as a dependent, then there's a property on the main floor plan view that says primary. Now, if there's no dependent views, primary is just blank. That dependency is just blank. But if it has dependent views, then it lists the main floor plan as primary, and I don't want those to show up in my list. So I'm going to be using that here for the dependency to get rid of anything that is the master. So if it does not equal, there's a whole bunch of views here, but if it does not equal primary, then I want to include it in my list. All right, now I've gone through, and that should, in theory, give me pretty much all of the views that I actually want to be placing onto sheets. Just scrolling through the list here, there's level 1 DVW plan, level 2 HVAC floor plan, right? Like there's all these views that I would really want placed onto a sheet in some form. In some cases, it's the overall plan. In some cases, it's the area A or B plan. But none of these are the master plan. It's just the actual floor plan that I'm documenting at maybe 1/8 inch or 16th inch per foot scale. And then there's the enlarged plan that would be at like 2x or 4x the scale, just giving me a larger view to better document what's going on here, right? So these are all the views that I want. In total here, if I take a look at the list, it's 159 approximately floor plan views that I actually want placed on sheets. So doing pretty good. This list is all right. Now for the sheets themselves, I also want to cartoon out what I want here. There's actually a few sheets that exist in my project, as I pointed out earlier over here, right? There's the cover view and then some of the pre-existing sort of typical sheets, the cover sheets per discipline. Those I actually don't want, but I want to see what the fields are and what the properties are so that I can kind of build this up in sort of a meaningful way here. So for the sheets themselves, there's a couple of properties that I mentioned that I really want. I want the sort order to be correct. I want the discipline correct, and then I want to establish the sheet number and sheet name. And so those are all fields that I actually want here. So for sheets, I want the sort order, right? Yeah, sort order, discipline here. I want the sheet numbering, sheet number, sheet name. These are all the properties that I want to set so that when I build placeholder sheets, these values are all getting set. Now, you may want other values in here as well. You may want versioning, you may want sub-disciplining, you may want whatever you want. You can add anything here to the list so that when we are creating brand new sheets, they come in with all of the correct properties. All right. This is pretty much everything that I want. Now I'm going to save these settings so I can come back to this in the future here. I don't want to have to recreate any of this so that when I actually call my settings up in the future, it knows to grab the views and filter them and do everything it's supposed to do here. It knows to grab the levels and filter them and order them and format them correctly. And it also knows to grab my sheets with the proper sorting or ordering of the fields here. This is all important stuff that I want to retain. So I'm going to save my settings to an external file. Now, I technically already have my settings saved here, and I'll be recalling them a little later on, but let's just go here so you can see where I have my stuff saved. I'm going to go to Spreadsheet Link, Sheets right here, and I have sheet creation for the MEP Productivity Pack both with sheets, so it actually builds out the sheets list from what's in my project. There's a reason why I might want that. And I also have it with no sheets, which is what I typically start with, and this is the one that I'll be automating a little later on. For now, though, I'm just going to call this out as webinar. And I'm going to be saving this Spreadsheet Link settings file, this SL settings file, so that I can recall this later and show you exactly how I build the rest of this up. Okay, so save that. It wants to know, well, it says it saved it successfully. That's fantastic. Now I'm going to save out my spreadsheet. And if you remember earlier, I was mentioning how I want to save this spreadsheet as an XLSM because I've already pre-figured out it's going to be easier to write a macro or record a macro to automate my sheet creation. And so I'm going to save it as an XLSM so the macro will stay in the workbook. See, in Microsoft Excel, if you save it as an XLSX, it will strip the macro out and I don't really want that for my template. I want it to start with a macro-enabled workbook here. You can see I've got a few of them here because I use macros quite frequently. I'm going to go ahead and just call this out as MEP Sheets, and I'll call this as Webinar again. And we'll save that. And it wants to let me know that it's successful, and it wants to know if I want to open it up. And you know what? I absolutely do want to open it up because I need to start doing my next step here in Excel and working with these in the Excel environment. Now, one thing that I could have done ahead of time is I could have gone to the Data tab and I could have unprotected this worksheet, especially the Sheets worksheet. I could have unprotected it so I could start deleting and doing whatever I want to do here for the rows of data. You can also go here in Spreadsheet Link and you can use the Create a New Sheet option, which works really well on Sheets tabs. You can also do this for rooms and for spaces, technically, if you need to, when you're on a Spaces or Rooms tab. But in this case, since I'm on Sheets, it's going to let me create a new sheet. If I create a new sheet, it wants to know if I want a specific title block here, any specific title block pre-selected, how many sheets, and it also wants to know if it's going to be an unplaced sheet. If I do unplaced, then I don't get the title block option there. Now, I could probably build up some workflow that lets you pick which title block and family and type it is that you want, but that's actually quite complicated to do, and I find that it's way easier to just do it live in the project when you have placeholder sheets. So I'm going to create an unplaced placeholder sheet in my project. It'll have all the right properties, and it will manifest with the right properties, but then I get to choose on my project exactly which title block it is that I want. So if I'm copying the architect's title block, I don't have to know the name ahead of time or the element ID for it ahead of time. I can just use an unplaced sheet here, which calls it out as new exclamation point, and I'm going to use that in my workflow so I know that it's a new sheet, and then I can fill all the information out for it, and it will create a new unplaced placeholder sheet with all the right properties. That's the technique that I'm going to use with this workflow. So over here in Excel, again, since I didn't go to Data and Unprotect, I have to show you how to unprotect your sheets manually. So I'm going to give you all the secrets here about how Spreadsheet Link works. If you go to the Review tab in Excel, once you've saved this file out, there's a cool little Protect and Unprotect option over here. Now, Unprotect is the feature that we're going to be using. However, before we do this, one of the things that we want to do is we want to record how we are unprotecting this sheet in a macro so that we can make this 100% repeatable. Anything that we do manually, we want to capture in a macro so that we can make it repeatable. So I'm going to do Unprotect Sheet, but before I do that, I'm going to go here to the Developer tab. The Developer tab allows me to use this little code grouping right here, and one of them is recording a macro. Now, if you don't have the Developer tab, I recommend Googling how to show it. It's actually pretty easy. You have to go to File, you have to go into Options. I forget exactly where inside of it here there is, but there's some option, I think it's Advanced, that lets you turn on the Developer tab. Let's see, can I find it real quick here? Yeah, I don't see it real quick. There's a checkbox in here that basically says, let me see the Developer tab. I forget where. But once you go find that, or you might be in Customize Ribbon. Yeah, there it is, Customize Ribbon. The Developer tab should be sitting over here, and you should be able to just simply check it on, and that'll let you see all of those features for Developer. That's where it is. Customize Ribbon, Developer checkbox, just check it on, and that should let you be able to see Developer here, which lets you then record a macro. Macros are really powerful. In Excel, if you want to do something repeatable, you can start by recording a macro and then do the thing that you want to make repeatable, and it will write the vast majority of the code for you. There's a little tweaking that you can do to clean it up, but at least you start with something, and it makes life really easy. So what I'm going to do is record a macro here. I'm going to call this macro Unprotect Sheet. Do not put spaces in here. You can put underscores, but no spaces. So if I wanted to put a space between that, I would do Unprotect_Sheet. I'm just going to store the macro directly in this workbook. It doesn't really need a description right now. I can do that description later, and I'm just going to click OK. Now, this is recording at this point. Whatever I do in this workbook, it's going to be recording absolutely everything that I'm doing. So the first thing I'll do is go over here to Review, Unprotect Sheet, and put in the super secret password of password, all lowercase, and then click OK. Oh, look at that. I put in the wrong password. Do I have cap locks on? I might. Unprotect sheet, password. Maybe I only put one S. There we go. I probably only put one S. Super secret password of all lowercase password. Got it. Now this tab here, this Sheets tab, this is unprotected, which is fantastic. Now I want to just keep that as its own little thing, so I'm going to stop recording now. I also want to make sure that no matter what I do, I get myself over here to the Sheets tab. And I want to get to the Sheets tab basically here in cell C4. And so I'm going to be starting with this being all cleaned out, as clean as I can possibly get it. So I'm just going to delete a bunch of stuff here. This I'm not going to record because I don't want the macro to do this part. I'm just going to delete a bunch of the stuff and shift the cells up. I can do that because this is now unprotected. If you recall over here, I need this very first A4 to be my newest sheet. This is my new row right here. And so I'm going to be putting that new value into this cell eventually, but I'm going to have my macro do it. So I'm going to basically delete the rest of this stuff here. Let's just clear the contents of this. And so I'm starting with a fairly clean environment here. Now what I'm going to do is turn my macro recording back on so that it knows what to do. I want to make sure that when it does all the work, it's doing it on the Sheets tab. So I'm going to start on the Levels tab so that when I record the next macro and it catches me going to the Sheets tab and selecting something specific, that's all being recorded so that I don't have to remember or look up how to do any of that. So let's just do record macro again. Record macro, and we're going to let's do select sheet, or select sheets tab. Doesn't really matter what you call it because we're going to basically be combining it all into one later on anyway. I'm going to click OK here. It's now recording. So I'm going to say go to Sheets and select this right here. And then I'm going to stop recording. So when I stop recording now, it has just that one little action that I did. It went to the Sheets tab and it selected a specific cell in the Sheets tab. And now I'm going to start the process of creating a brand new sheet. Now this is going to get a little bit longer, and I might want to do this in individual steps so that I can kind of capture this and order it however I want. But what I'm going to do is just one more macro here for entering, say, a formula over here. In fact, I'll do this, and I will enter a formula here for the sheet sort order in that same macro. Now, for the sheet order, let's take a look at this. There are different values here. Mechanical has a specific sheet order. Fire protection has its own sheet order. And I want to fill these out here in the list, but I want to base that specifically on whatever the views are, right? So the views over here, probably based on the subdiscipline of the view or combination of subdiscipline and discipline, I want to use these properties here to figure out what the sort order of this is supposed to be. So if it's a fire protection view, or if it's HVAC, which effectively is a mechanical view, then I need to set a specific sort order for those kinds of collections, whatever the subdiscipline discipline matchup is. And you know what? I may as well at the same time set whatever that discipline value is supposed to be, and I may as well at the same time also set up whatever I want that abbreviation for the sheet to be, whether it's an E sheet or an M sheet or an MP or a P or an F, like all of those. I want to set that up. And I want to store that someplace in here so it makes it real easy for me to expand it and change it in the future, and I don't have to rewrite any macros. Well, let's get back to Excel. Since I'm in Excel, one of the things that I can do is just make a brand new tab. And Spreadsheet Link won't care about my new tab. It's going to be perfectly happy with this new tab. I'm just going to move it here to the end, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call this thing Settings. Okay, on this tab, I'm going to have a couple of key columns here that I need. So I'm going to have discipline. This is sort of my resulting sheet discipline. This is what I want the sheet discipline to ultimately read as. I want to have a sub-discipline here. I'm going to have a sort order, and I'm going to have an abbreviation. This is the sheet letter. I probably should spell it right. Abbreviation. There, that's better. That's less terrible. And I may as well kind of maximize these cells here. So there's a few of these that I'm going to have. Let's see. Let's just list these out. There's electrical sheets, potentially. Good Lord, this I got to spell right. E-L-E-C, electrical. There we go. I try not to type during presentations because it's kind of frustrating here. I won't type everything. I'll start copying and pasting here in a minute. There's lighting, L-I-G-H-T, lighting. There we go. There's going to be like power sheets. There's site sheets if I have site lighting, for example. There's systems. What else do we have here? There's HVAC sheets. HVAC. I think there's, what was the other ones over here? If I go to views, MEPPP is a good one, so I could probably just copy this out here. Oh, I can't edit this because this is protected. Now that's fun. Well, if you remember, I can unprotect this sheet if I really want to. I can go to review, unprotect sheet, and put in password. And then I can actually copy and paste some of these things here. So that way I don't have to type them out one by one. So let's just steal here. Let's steal MEPPP from the list. Copy this, go to settings, MEPPP. That way I don't have to type it all out all as one. There's also plumbing sheets. I think that's all they are, right? There's plumbing. Yeah, domestic water and sanitary are both listed as plumbing as a subdiscipline. And then I think I have one other one, which is fire protection. Let's go back here. Fire protection. There we go. So now these subdisciplines that are found in my views, and there might be others that I care about as well. If you're doing this for architecture or structure, you want to build this out for your whole company, whatever those subdiscipline values are, use those because they're really powerful. Now over here in the discipline, I'm just going to use these values. I'm just going to copy this across and sort of autofill this down so I know sort of what collection these all apply to. These HVAC and MEPPP sheets, these are both mechanical. And so I'm going to copy this, copy paste, and then this next one down here. Come on, go away. Let's get rid of this. There we go. This is a plumbing sheet. Actually, these are both going to just kind of be the same. Copy, paste. Now I'm using this discipline column here as the value that's going to get driven into my sheet's discipline. This column here, this discipline column, this ultimately matches what's going on over here in my sheets collections, whatever I want this top level discipline to be. So electrical, fire protection, mechanical, plumbing, if you had others, add them to the list with their matching subdisciplines over here. You'll notice that I'm deviating here intentionally. Fire protection, there isn't a real Revit discipline of fire protection, but since discipline is sort of a text field you can just enter onto a sheet, it doesn't matter if you match Revit's out of the box discipline. You can do what you want here. And that's what I'm doing. I'm using Excel to drive that value in. Now, I also need to steal some of these sort orders here since I don't really want to go manually fill them out. Oh, I've already deleted all my sheets. Let's steal them from the sheets over here. Mechanical is 23.1, electrical 26.1. Let's just kind of pull this to the side so I can use those values. I'll just type them in manually here. If I go to settings, the sort order for my electrical sheets, all of my electrical sheets are all going to be 26.1, it looks like. Yeah, even if it's sort of a different kind of view, we're just going to use that. So 26.1. I'm just going to copy this, paste, 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 paste. HVAC sheets, the mechanical sheets are 23.1, 0.1, thank you. Copy, paste. Plumbing sheets look like they're 22.1, and fire protection looks like it's 21.1. Now, if you want to subdivide these out, y'all can have a good time. You can change your sort order however you want. This just sort of helps Revit in schedules sort these in a clean way. My architecture sheets might be in the ones. My site sheets might be 0, 1.1 or whatever you want. Structural sheets might be just after that, then architecture, and then all of my trades, right? Whatever you want. Now here for the abbreviation, I also want to make sure that the very first letter on my sheets, as they look like over, I can't see them, would be E sheets, F sheets, M sheets, P sheets. There might be other designators you want, but basically in my Excel settings, I'm going to be using those abbreviations here. So I'm just going to go down and do E, E, E. Oops, let's just copy this, copy, paste, paste, paste. M sheet, P sheet, F sheet. There we go. So I've got these discipline designators here. Now I can use this. This is when I was talking about like looking data up to fill this out over here. I want to use that so when I look at my view, my very first view here is a mechanical view, level 1 HVAC floor plan. Scope boxes for the overall buildings. This is an overall floor plan. My sub-discipline here, HVAC, family, floor plans, right? Like all of these here, I want all of this effectively to determine what sheet name and number and grouping and discipline this associates to. So I'm going to be using this sub-discipline value here as my lookup to go, okay, if it's HVAC, then over here on settings, that basically means it's a mechanical discipline and its sort order should be this guy right here. So let's do that. Let's look that up. Let's figure out how to exactly do this. So I'm going to use a special formula to actually drive this, but I'm going to do it in Excel over here. So sheets, let's do our very first sheet and start doing some of this process. And then I'm just going to kind of show you the final result of this so we don't have to sit here and watch me build up a full formula for an hour. Just show you real quick. So sort sheet order. Let's do this one first. I'm going to do an equals. This is how you start a formula. I'm going to do index a certain value. I have to give it a whole collection of data to index to figure out what to look up. What I'm going to be indexing here specifically is the settings, and that was for sheet order. So I'm just going to index this list right here, C2 to C10. And I don't want that to ever move. So I don't want it to ever slide down as I autofill later on. I don't want this row 2 to change, and I don't want this row 10 to change. So I'm going to put dollar signs in front of them. That way it can never move. So now I've given it sort of a whole collection of data, but I have to tell it what row to pick from. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use another command here. In the index command, there's a pairing that goes really well with index. It's called match. This lets me give it a whole column of information and give it a look it up data, and it'll find me the row that it comes from, and it'll use that row to tell the index array what row of data to return back. Some of you may be familiar with a command called VLOOKUP. It's similar to VLOOKUP, has a lot more power, it's a lot faster. Index and match is way faster, and it lets you do things out of sequence. So I could be looking up a value here and returning myself a value over here. VLOOKUP can't do that, whereas index and match can, and it can do it very efficiently. So what I'm going to do here is use the match command, match, and the lookup value is what I'm trying to source from. So since I'm starting here in views, I'm going to be on the views tab, and I want to look up this sub-discipline right here. This is my lookup value. And this one, as I drag it down, I do want it to auto-update because I'm going to be dragging this down for every single sheet, and I want it to auto-fill itself in, which is great. The lookup array that I want to look for is like, what are the values that match any of these sub-disciplines here? Well, those are all, again, back here on settings. And it's going to be this sub-discipline collection right here. This one I do not want to update. So I'm going to go ahead and put those dollar signs in front of here again. Now what I wanted to do is find that sub-discipline value in this settings list explicitly. I don't want it to ever try to find sort of a close match. I want it to be an exact match. So I'm going to use the 0 option here for the exact match feature. And that's effectively all I got to do. Now you could, if you really wanted to, provide it a column number. If I had given it a huge sort of array of data here to go look through, I could say look in column such and such instead of looking, in whatever, but I only gave it one column, so it only has one place to look. I don't have anything else to do here. I can just close this off and call it good. Oh, I needed one more closing parenthesis apparently, and that will come back with the view 23.1 to match up with whatever that discipline is. Now, if I want to do the discipline, it would be the exact same thing. In fact, I can steal this, copy this formula, come over here, paste it in, paste, and for the discipline, I am specifically looking on the settings tab for this A column right here, A2 to A10, instead of looking C2 to C10. So I'm going to look over here in this column. I'm using the exact same sub-discipline match though. So on my sheets right here, I can say, instead of doing C2 to C10, just change this to A2 to A10. Now, I forgot to do a thing. Some of you astute people may have noticed that I forgot to do a thing, and that was I forgot to go to the developer tab and record my macro. That's okay though, because I don't need it to record everything that I'm clicking around to. So if I was to copy this formula right here, and then just delete this, And maybe I copy this formula here as well. I just let's just control C this guy as well, copy, and then I'll just delete that. Now let's do record macro. The macro is going to be set sheet order. Oh, no spaces, Sean. Set order and discipline. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit OK here. Now I'm going to click into this cell. I want to make sure I'm selecting a cell, so it's going to record that. And then I can paste my formula. I can hit enter. And then I can click my next cell here and do something like Windows V, which lets me actually see all my previously copied things. And I can pick my next formula. And I can hit enter. And then I can stop recording. So this way I can show you a little bit about the macro recording thing. This way you know exactly what's going on. If you go into macros here, it'll show you all the macros that you've recorded or written. If I wanted to see how this works, I can simply edit any one of these, like set the sheet order and discipline. Let's edit this and see what it does. What it does is it pulls up the macros window over here, and it'll even name each one of these: unprotect sheet, select sheets tab, set order and discipline. And inside of here, you can see it recorded everything that I did. It selected the range, it set the formula to a something, whatever it wanted to set it to, and that's fine. And then it did the next range, and then it activates the next cell, and then it does the next range, right? It just keeps doing these things. And this way, I can make this all completely repeatable. Now, I did not actually record the setting of a value in a specific cell. I could have done that, but I didn't actually do that apparently. So that would have been where I wanted to put that new value in. But you know what? Instead of me going through the rest of this, let's just see what I had already written in a previous template, since I've already saved that once. Let's open up my template that I had from before. So File, Open. Let's open up, if I browse for this thing, where do I go? Folders. There we go. No, come on, browse. Here we go. They changed the whole layout on me. Well, not recently. I guess I'm just used to a different layout. But let's go to this guy here. The MEP Sheets Test Without Sheets. Just going to open this up so you can kind of see this. Let's close out of this Excel file. And let's go to the developer macros here. You'll notice that I just have one macro now. It's called Build Sheets because I've combined all the stuff together. If I edit this, you'll notice here, there's a big long macro inside of here, and I've put a comment above each one of these. So you can see I've got define the start position for the sheets. I've got activate the correct sheets tab. Remember, we did this particular one specially, so it does worksheets, sheets activate. It unprotects it with the special super secret password. And then it goes and it does the doing the entry of the values inside of here. So it determines, like, if it's specifically empty, if it's the starting sheet, it puts in that new exclamation point property here. I actually did it with a formula, so it knew to do it when it was not empty. And then it goes through and it does the next thing. It sets the actual formula here for the, what is this one? The sheet ordering. And then it does the sheet discipline. And then it builds up the sheet number. Now, the sheet number is a very complex formula here. It goes through and does a big, long if statement to figure out if it's a specific discipline, use a certain thing. If it's got demo in the view name or view creator abbreviation, put a D as a suffix there. If there's any problems here, do something specific, but then go find me, whatever sheet series it is supposed to be from the settings. Go in there and figure out what level it's on. That's my second digit, so a 1. E1 would be something like an E-power plan. E2 might be E-lighting plan, but then I have my levels in my second spot. So E11 would be like a first floor power plan. E21, a first floor lighting plan. And then I go in there and I figure out what kind of view it is. If it's an overall building view, or if it is an enlarged plan view or whatever, I can go in there and sort of put either a 1 or a 2 or a whatever, depending on what letter the actual area plan is. If your areas aren't named by letters, you may have to do something else. And then I do a sheet naming here, slightly shorter formula, but it figures out if it's an overall view or an enlarged plan view or whatever. And then I do some extra special formatting inside of there so I can figure out if I've got duplicates and some conditional formatting. And then I autofill this down. One of the things that I do is I strip the formula. And I do that on purpose so it makes it real easy for the end user. And then I make the columns look good by doing a basic auto fit. And then I clear all my selections and just end on the C4 sheet. So let's see this in action. Let's see this actually do a thing. It's actually do something interesting since I was talking about all these settings here. I'm just going to close this all out. In Spreadsheet Link, after I built up my template, I did an advanced save. So it's the exact same settings that I had before, but I did an advanced save, and I specifically told it to pre-open a worksheet, an XLSM file over here. I would tell it to pre-open up my test sheets or my webinar sheet or whatever, so that when I load my settings, it automatically pulls that spreadsheet in first, and then it replaces the tabs it's supposed to replace with the right data. And then my macro knows what to do from there. So that's an advanced little save here. If I load my settings from a file, I want you to watch exactly what happens right down here and here on the Sheets tab. So it tells me that loading my settings are going to clear everything out of here, and it's going to replace it. It wants to know if I want to continue. And in my case, I do. And I'm going to use my little No Sheets option here. What this does is it actually does not fill out the Sheets tab at all. It'll just leave it alone. I'm going to load this up. It did open up that workbook, but it has here a Sheets tab, and it has a Levels and Views tabs just like before, but it only puts data onto the Levels tab and the Views tab. That's it. That's the only places where it puts data. The Sheets tab, it actually leaves completely empty. So even if I had Sheets, or since I do have Sheets, it just doesn't do anything with it. It leaves it blank. And that's okay in my case, because I'm just starting a brand new project, and I know the only sheets that I have happen to be just the typical sheets that aren't plan sheets anyway. So I'm going to save this spreadsheet out now. I have to make sure that I save it as an XLSM. That's really important, otherwise it'll strip my formulas, or my macro. And we're going to save this here into the project directory of our little startup series here. Save it out here as Sheets XLSM. Save that out. It already exists. I'm going to go ahead and replace it, and it wants to know then if I want to open it, which I do, of course. So now I'm in Excel with my levels. In fact, by the way, we have slightly moved on right now into the testing stage here, the save and test, but also we're moving now into the generating of plan sheets live, because I'm going to be actually generating sheets from this now and showing you how this works. Now, when you generate plan sheets, we're going to be loading the save settings in the Spreadsheet Link, which I just did. We're going to be saving it as an XLSM file, which again, I just did. Opening the save file in Excel, it's already open because it did that automatically. And then I'm going to be running the macro. And there's a special thing that I did in my macro to actually highlight duplicates so that we can actually fix this. We're then going to save that file, open it back up in Spreadsheet Link, and apply the Sheets tab to the project, specifically the Sheets tab, so it creates the sheets. And then we're going to be generating real sheets and selecting the real title block, the correct title blocks that we want to be using. So let's do that step now. Over here in Revit, in Spreadsheet Link, well, I've already done that step, saved it out. In Excel, rather, here, on the Sheets tab, I'm going to be running that macro. And technically, even if I wasn't on the Sheets tab, if I was, say, over here looking at the views, I can go to the Sheets tab automatically with the macro. Let's run it. Developer tab, macros, take this Build Sheets macro and run it. When I run it, it puts me on the Sheets tab, and even though it was empty before, now it's filled it all out, all the way down for all of my floor plan views that I have, all 160 some odd floor plan views. It builds me sheets for every single one of them, gives me the sheet order for each of the discipline collections, the sheet number, well, the discipline as well, the sheet name, all laid out here, all ready to go. And I told this specifically to do this in title casing. It matches sort of the casing that we use across all of the MEP Productivity Pack. If you wanted this to be all 100% uppercase, like in this case, HVAC doesn't look very good not being uppercase, I could force these to all be uppercase, simply change the macro just a little bit. Now you'll notice some oddities here. There's some colorization going on inside of here, and it's doing that because there's technically duplicates someplace in the list. For example, this level 1 lighting ceiling plan, remember I had a ceiling plan, but then I also had a floor plan. I didn't actually generate these as using the ceiling plan view template, and because of that, it named it based on the floor plan view template, even though it is technically a ceiling plan. So I need to pick one of these to get rid of. Since most of my views here are all floor plan named, I'm going to get rid of this one and just not create the sheet for it. So I can go ahead and get rid of that. I also am not doing any demolition in this project, so even though I left some demolition views behind in my template, I don't want sheets for them really. So I'm going to be getting rid of all of those. I'm just going to right-click and delete those out of my list. And when I delete those, my previously highlighted level 1 lighting floor plan right here, this automatically turns itself back to the typical mint green color because it's figured out there isn't a duplicate. And so we're good to go. Scrolling down my list, I'm seeing a few others. There's HVAC floor plan. Most of these are listed as floor plan, but there was, in the list, some ceiling plans. And apparently, there was a roof level HVAC ceiling plan. I don't know how you have a roof on a ceiling. I suppose maybe it's in a little entry house. Those are two views or two sheets that I don't need because I have them elsewhere in my list. So I'm simply going to right-click these and delete those two sheets. They're gone. Looking down further, apparently I had a whole bunch of mechanical floor plans, but I never called out in my settings what a mechanical view was supposed to be numbered as, so it doesn't know how to number any of this. And that's okay. I guess I'll probably delete those views later. They're not going to go on a sheet, or maybe I make those sheets manually, or maybe I update my settings. But I'm going to right-click and simply delete all of those NA views because I didn't know how to name it. The formula didn't know what to do. I have a roof level piping demolition, and again, these demolition views, I don't need them because I'm not doing any demolition here. Get rid of this one, get rid of my, I guess I'll keep the roof level mechanical plan there, and delete, it's a demo plan, I guess I'll get rid of that one too, since it's an MD sheet. I don't need the D sheets because there's no demolition here. Delete all this. There is a level 1 piping floor plan and a level 1 piping plan. Apparently this one was built on a different view template and therefore it had a different name, but it's duplicating my sheet number again. That MP211 is a problem here, so I'm going to get rid of this guy. This is the one thing that I do have to do manually. I got to just kind of look through this and make sure that I'm not having any duplicates. I know that there was a bunch of plumbing floor plans that were just generic plumbing plans here. We'll keep the buried one, but everything else we're going to get rid of. The underfloor demolition I don't need. Roof level fire protection. There's 2 of those for whatever reason. Let's get rid of one of those and delete a lot of these. This will probably clear up a lot of my list. Buried. Let's do X for underground, I guess. I didn't make a sheet number for that, so I can just type in a letter. This, by the way, is why I specifically stripped the formula. If a user was to click on a cell and see, a stupid long formula for this, it would be confusing to them. And so one of my steps was I copied or I cut and I paste without formulas right here in place so that all it gives me back is the numbers and the end user doesn't have to see something that's confusing to them. They can simply type in here and override something that I had potentially entered. Here's another example. I've got a bunch of duplicates here for level 1 fire protection. I'm going to get rid of 2 of them and only need the 1 sheet. Looking back through my list, everything looks good to go. So all told, it looks like I'm going to have about 125 sheets this is going to make. Let's save it. Save it, and I'm going to close it out because I don't need this anymore. I've now got my sheets ready to go. Over here in Spreadsheet Link, I'm simply going to open that Spreadsheet Link file, or open that spreadsheet file, replace all my settings here. Let's go find this here. Open temp. There it is. Oh, I have to switch this out. Fred dropped me in the right directory, but it was looking for an XLSX, and I have to pull open an XLSM file here. There's my sheets that I just saved out. Let's open this up. Populates all the sheets, and we're going to generate all of our sheets now here in Spreadsheet Link. So from the Sheets tab, I'm going to apply the active worksheet specifically to my project. It's going to build all my sheets. 124 sheets built. Perfect. Not 125. So that's done. I'm done with Spreadsheet Link. Now, some of you at this point might be going, good Lord, Sean, you took a really long time to explain how to build this up. Well, I wanted you to have a really good idea of how to put this template together, but ultimately, the process really is, for the end user, a 2-minute process. Load settings, go grab whatever those settings are. In this case, my RET demo stuff here, Spreadsheet Link, Sheets, here it is, my no sheets Spreadsheet Link file, right? It fills it all out, replaces my views, replaces my levels. They save this out as an XLSM. They run the macro, visually validate any duplicate sheets. They solve all of that, and then they can open that spreadsheet up here in Revit, in Spreadsheet Link, and simply apply the active worksheet back to their project. It really is a 2-minute process at that point. Once the views are all created, you can generate your sheets in a matter of seconds. The hardest part of this was generating all that formula work. Okay, I've done that. My sheets now exist. Let's really build them, because they are here simply as placeholder sheets, but I want them to be real sheets. So if you right-click now on your sheets, I can do a new sheet. Notice all these placeholder sheets down here with all of my sheet numbering formatting that I want it to have. All of this here, if I want to build them, say I want to build a bunch of electrical sheets real quick, just go through all of the E sheets, shift select all of them, and tell it that I want to use the 22 by 34 firm title block electrical, right? I want to use the electrical title block here, and go ahead and build up all those E sheets. And it builds them all out, puts them in the right area, sets their discipline, sets their sheet sort order. Everything is filled out inside of here. Sheet numbers filled out, names filled out, everything's all good to go. If I wanted to build a bunch of fire protection sheets, it's the exact same process. Right-click sheets, new sheet. In fact, with the rest of these, I'm just going to use the mechanical title block for all of them. I'm just going to grab all of my sheets and tell it to use the mechanical title block and click OK. And it's going to dump each of these into their correct collection. Fire protection sheets all go into fire protection. Mechanical sheets all go into mechanical. Looks like a couple of demo sheets skipped by me. I could, of course, delete these if I wanted to. Simply delete those sheets. Mechanical sheets, couple, again, demo sheets maybe squeaked by here in this case. Looking through my plumbing list, all my plumbing sheets kind of drop in here. So this process now, instead of going right-click, new sheet, right-click, new sheet, one by one by one by one, and typing names and making sheet numbers, after a little bit of effort, the Spreadsheet Link, even after I talked for an hour, you probably wouldn't have been done building all these sheets. This is way faster. And now it's a 2-minute process after you've made your views. So the final thing in this webinar today is we're going to talk about how to populate these sheets, how to put views onto the sheets themselves. Now, there's technically 2 options that you've got. So let's talk about what they are. In option 1, you can establish one good sheet, one sheet template, so to speak. Lay all the views out that you want, the floor plans, key plans, notes, whatever, legends, anything that you want. Lay them on one good plan sheet, maybe a good overall plan sheet, maybe a good enlarged plan sheet for area A, a good enlarged plan sheet for area B, whatever you want. Lay out those typical template sheets. And then you can use Sheet Assistant to place all of the other unplaced views on the other similar sheets. I'm going to go through that step once for one collection of views so you can see how that's done. Option number 2. Once again, you're going to still establish a good sheet. No matter what you're doing, you need one sheet template, one sheet that's laid out the way that you want it, or one sheet of each type that's laid out the way that you want it. And then you're going to manually go through, open up each sheet, and place its appropriate views on the other sheets. Now, this one's a bit more tedious, a bit more manual in my opinion, because you're manually throwing them on a sheet, but it doesn't matter if it's laid out good. You just throw them on the sheet. Just put them on there. That's it. And then once they exist on the sheet, you can use Sheet Assistant to update the placement of all of the plans across all plan sheets, because I can use this one good template and say, hey, here's a collection of a whole bunch of other sheets. Make their views position the exact same way that my one good sheet is. And I don't have to go through a drop-down selection list. So if you don't like my drop-down selection option here, you can manually place the views yourself and then use an automated workflow to simply update sheets instead of placing new views. Either way can work. Now I'm going to do one sheet for you, just one, so you can kind of see how this works in Revit. Over here, if I go to a sheet, let's do, I guess, a mechanical level 1 HVAC floor plan view. Or maybe I'll do the basement level floor plan view, the overall plan view. Not the area A, just the overall plan, okay? Overall plan, I'm going to go here to the HVAC views up here, floor plans, HVAC basement level right there. This is the overall plan view. drag and drop, place my view on my sheet where I want it. Now my scale is a little bit off, so it doesn't work perfectly here, but it's pretty darn close. It's good enough for what I need. I probably would have used a different size title block, maybe an architectural, E size? Yeah, architectural D size might have worked well, whatever. Might have changed my overall building scope box, it's whatever. But I've got the view placed on a sheet. If I had a key plan, maybe I throw it up here. If I had some notes, maybe I put them up there. If I had some kind of a legend view here, like mechanical tag summary, maybe I want that to show up here on, no, it's not a good example. Let's see, symbols, probably not good either. Yeah, not a good example. I might make like a general notes legend and put that onto a sheet. Or a title block, a schedule that's a general notes here. If I have, say, maybe a keynotes legend that I want, I could throw that onto a sheet and repeat that over and over again. But with this, once I've got a sheet set up and I've got my view positioned pretty much exactly where I want it, now I can go to Sheet Assistant and I can go to all of my other plan views out here where I've got, in this case, this is M0, so all of my M10 sheets or 11 sheets, 12, 1 whatever, but specifically the one that suffixes with a 1 because that's my HVAC overall plan view. I can go to those sheets specifically and lay out my first floor, my second floor, my third floor, fourth floor, all in the same exact place across each of those sheets, the roof plan all the same way. How do I do that? Well, Sheet Assistant here. Sheet Assistant allows me to go in here. Let's just search for M-1. That'll help me find all of my M100 series sheets. I've already laid out my basement plan here. So I'm going to be specifically laying out level 1, level 2. Where's it at here? Level 2, level 3, level 4. I want to lay out those sheets. In fact, those are going to be new sheets specifically. Let's try this again. M-1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the sheets that I want to lay out, and I'm going to use from here my M101 basic basement level floor plan view. I want to use this as my template, and I want to lay out these 4 sheets in particular. Now, this tool understands there's only one view on here. If there was more than one view, it would have listed out each of the individual views, the floor plan, the legend, a schedule, or whatever it is. But in this case, I'm simply going to go through and find the views that are labeled HVAC floor plan or level 1 HVAC floor plan or whatever it's called. Now, because my existing unplaced views all have the specific prefix first, I know that this is all going to be in floor plans. So I can simply scroll down to floor plans. I know it's going to be in HVAC because of how I named them and set them all up. And it's my HVAC floor plan 01, and then ultimately later on floor plan 02. So it makes it real easy to get to these collections and just organize them real quick with those exact same views over and over again. Pull this down here, floor plan HVAC floor plan 02. Scroll down. I'm not needing to go in my project browser and drag and drop and wait for a view regen. I'm just going to let this tool place this particular view in the same place as view 1 over here. Same thing here with my level 4 view, existing unplaced view. Drop this down. This is my HVAC 4th level. HVAC, where to go? Floor plan 04. This one here is HVAC floor plan 03. Too far. HVAC floor plan 03. All right, so now that I've chosen those views, 3, 4, 1, and 2, they're all set up out here already. All I have to do is just simply hit apply, and it's going to go through these other sheets here, the M111, the M121, and 3141, and place those views on those sheets for me. That, to me, is a lot faster than manually accessing the sheet, finding the view, dragging and dropping, and then positioning it. This places it automatically all at once in one step. And it places it in the same exact place. So if I was to go take a look at this now, M111, same view, well, the correct view in the correct position on this floor plan. Level 2, same thing, same view, same position on the sheet, the correct sheet, and I'm matching up here in this case my HVAC floor plan 02, which is my level 2 HVAC floor plan here on my sheet. All done, all set up, ready to go. I could do that for all of my floor plans, and this probably take me another half hour to go through and pick all those. but I've fully cartooned out 100% of my sheet set at that point. All right, jumping back one final time to the PowerPoint here. Take a look at where we're at. We have just done the project startup creating of the plan sheet. So we now have done open detached, reloading links, copy monitor, creating plan views, and we've done creating the plan sheets. And really, this create plan sheets, once the workflow is all done, it's probably going to take, I don't know, give or take around maybe 30 minutes total to do all of your plan sheets and get all of the views placed on those plan sheets on a, say, 4-level project. The next one, part 3, we're going to be talking about how can you very easily bring in all of the other typical schedules and preliminary detail sheets that you need as quickly as possible so your project starts right away with all the right views that you're going to need. So with that, we do look forward to seeing you all in the next CTC webinar, and we hope that you all have a fantastic day. And yeah, let me think here. Events page, I didn't mention this earlier, ctcsoftware.com/events. That's where you're going to want to go to make sure you can get signed up for next week's part 3, talking about that, the importing of the proper schedules and details sheets. Thank you all. We'll catch you later.